Admiral Hein-Woo Kim stood on the bridge of the mining ship Dauntless, watching his world die. Through the massive viewing window, Earth burned like a broken star. Orange and red flames covered continents that had been green just hours before. The blue oceans boiled and turned gray under the endless bombardment from space. "Sir, we're getting the final evacuation signals," said Captain So-Young Park, her voice shaking. She was the chief engineer of their small fleet, but right now she looked like a frightened child. "The last transport ships are jumping to hyperspace." Hyun-Woo said nothing. He could not look away from Earth. Somewhere down there, his wife and daughter had been living in Seoul when the attack began. He would never see them again. 8 billion people were dying while he watched from safety. The Galactic Council had given humanity one last chance to surrender. They wanted all humans to accept genetic changes that would make them peaceful and civilized. Most human leaders had refused. They said humans should stay human, not become something else to please alien masters. So the council decided to solve the human problem forever. "Admiral," called out intelligence officer Je-Won Choi from her station. "I'm reading massive energy signatures. The council fleet is preparing for another bombardment wave." Hyun-Woo finally turned away from the window. The bridge of the Dauntless was crowded with refugees from other ships. Mining workers, scientists, soldiers, families. All of them stared at him with desperate eyes. These 500,000 people scattered across their fleet were all that remained of humanity. "How many ships do we have total?" Hyun-Woo asked. 47 vessels, sir," reported Captain Tae-ho Lee from the military escort ship Iron Phoenix. His voice came through the communication system, steady and professional despite everything. 22 mining ships, 15 research vessels, 8 cargo haulers, and 2 military escorts. Weapons? Mining lasers, construction equipment, and whatever small arms we could grab during evacuation. The Iron Phoenix and my ship have some military-grade weapons, but nothing that could fight a council fleet. Hyun-Woo looked around the bridge. These people needed hope, but he would not lie to them. The truth was simple. They were the last humans alive, and they were completely outgunned. "Sir," So-Young said quietly, "the council is broadcasting something." The main screen flickered to life. A tall, blue-skinned alien appeared. Han-Woo recognized him immediately. Prime Minister Thexmore of the Velthari, the species that led the Galactic Council. His black eyes showed no emotion as he spoke. "The pest control operation is complete," Thexmore said in perfect English. "The human infestation has been removed from the galaxy. Let this serve as a warning to all species. Cooperation with Council authority is not optional. Resistance leads only to extinction." The broadcast ended. The bridge fell silent except for the quiet sobbing of some refugees. "Captain Park," Hyun-Woo said, his voice calm and cold. "How long until our hyperspace drives are ready?" 10 minutes, sir." "And our destination?" "The Kepler Nebula, as planned. It's far from Council space, with plenty of asteroids for mining and hidden bases." Hyun-Woo nodded. Then he activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice would now reach every human still alive. "This is Admiral Kim. In 10 minutes we will jump to hyperspace and leave this system forever. Earth is gone. Our families are gone. Everything we built over thousands of years is gone." He paused, letting the weight of those words settle. "But we are not gone. We are still here. We are still human. And we will remember." He looked directly into the camera. "I make this promise to every person listening. We will return to this galaxy. We will find the ones who did this to us. And when we do, there will be no mercy. They showed our children no mercy. They showed our elders no mercy. They showed our world no mercy. We will remember that lesson." The refugees around the bridge stood straighter. Their tears stopped. Something hard and cold appeared in their eyes. "For now we run, we hide, we learn, we grow stronger." Hyun-Woo's voice grew louder. "The council thinks we are dead. Good, let them think that. Dead things do not take revenge. But we are not dead. We are something much more dangerous." He turned to face the window again, where Earth's corpse still burned. "We are survivors." Won Choi cleared her throat. "Admiral, I've been monitoring Council communications during the attack. They're calling this a successful pest elimination. They plan to turn our solar system into a memorial park for their victory. A memorial park? Haiyan Wu repeated softly. Yes, sir? They want to put up monuments celebrating the removal of the dangerous human anomaly from the galaxy. Something dark and terrible flickered across Haiyan Wu's face. Captain Park, I want you to record everything we saw here today? Every ship burning, every continent destroyed, every life lost. Store it in our databases, all of it? Sir? When we return, I want the Council to understand exactly what they did. I want them to see every face they murdered, every child they burned, every dream they destroyed. He turned back to the bridge crew. And then I want them to understand that we remember all of it. The hyperspace drives powered up with a deep thrumming sound that vibrated through the ship's hull. Outside, space began to distort as the other ships prepared to jump. Admiral, Tejo's voice crackled over the communication system. Iron Phoenix is ready to jump. All ships reporting ready. Do it. Space twisted around them as the last of humanity vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind only the burning graveyard of their world. In the empty space where the human fleet had been, a Council patrol ship detected the jump signatures and reported back to their commanders. The report was simple: confirmed elimination of remaining human vessels, no survivors detected. But the patrol ship was wrong. 500,000 humans had just disappeared into the galaxy's most dangerous region, carrying with them Earth's entire military database, its industrial knowledge, and something the Council had never encountered before. A species with nothing left to lose. Admiral Haiyan Wu Kim sat in his command chair as the Dauntless traveled through hyperspace toward an uncertain future. Around him, refugees began the long process of turning mining ships into warships, research vessels into weapons labs, and cargo haulers into troop transports. They had no home to return to, no families to protect, no old lives to rebuild. All they had left was each other, their human ingenuity, and a burning need for justice that would consume the galaxy. The Council had made a mistake. They had not destroyed humanity. They had forged it into something much worse than they could ever imagine. 5 years had passed since Earth died, and the Kepler Nebula had become humanity's new home. What started as a desperate refugee camp floating among asteroids had grown into something the galaxy had never seen before: a military-industrial complex. Built entirely for revenge, Admiral Haiyan Wu Kim walked through the corridors of New Sol Station, the massive space habitat that served as humanity's capital. The walls were made from processed asteroid metal, and the air still smelled faintly of welding equipment and industrial chemicals. But it was alive with purpose. Admiral, the morning briefing is ready, said Commander So-Young Park. She was no longer the frightened engineer from 5 years ago. Now she wore the uniform of the Human Engineering Corps, with the rank insignia of the fleet's chief technology officer. Her eyes held the same cold determination that marked all the survivors. They entered the command center, where holographic displays showed the current state of the human fleet. What Haiyan Wu saw would have amazed the Council leaders, who thought they had wiped out humanity. 200 warships hung in space around the nebula. Not converted mining vessels or modified cargo haulers, but purpose-built instruments of war. Each one incorporated technology that combined human engineering with salvaged alien equipment in ways that no Council species had ever attempted. Status report: Haiyan Wu ordered. Captain Wu Jin Nam, commander of the new dreadnought Retribution, spoke first. All capital ships are operational, sir. We now have 12 dreadnoughts, 45 cruisers, and 143 destroyers and frigates. Every ship is equipped with our new adaptive armor systems. The adaptive armor was one of So-Young's greatest innovations. Unlike Council ships that relied on energy shields, human vessels used armor plating that learned from each attack. After being hit by an energy weapon, the armor would automatically adjust its molecular structure to better resist that specific type of damage. Our kinetic bombardment systems are ready for deployment, added Commander Min Ho Yun, leader of the Human Strike Corps. We can turn any asteroid into a planet killer with 6 hours of preparation time, Hyanwu nodded. The kinetic bombardment weapons were perhaps humanity's most terrifying innovation. While Council species fought with energy weapons and particle beams, humans had perfected the art of throwing rocks very, very fast. A tungsten rod accelerated to near-light speed could crack a planet's crust. What about our enhancement programs? Hyanwu asked. Dr. Yoonji Kim stepped forward. She led the Human Genetic Improvement Project, but unlike the Council's forced modifications, her work enhanced existing human traits rather than replacing them. We've completed enhancement procedures. On 60,000 volunteers, sir. Enhanced strength, reflexes, and mental processing speed. But most importantly, we've improved human adaptation abilities. That was the key discovery. Humans were already the most adaptable species in the galaxy, but the enhancement process made them even more flexible. Enhanced humans could adjust to new environments, learn alien technologies, and adapt to combat situations faster than any Council species. Intelligence report, Hyanwu said. Turning to Ji-Won Choi, the intelligence officer had spent 5 years building a spy network throughout Council space. She looked tired but satisfied. Sir, I've successfully infiltrated 17 Council worlds. Our agents are mostly enhanced humans who can pass for modified aliens at casual inspection. She activated a holographic display showing the galaxy's political situation. The Council has erected monuments on Earth's former location. They call it the Memorial to Successful Pest Control every year. They hold ceremonies celebrating the elimination of the human threat. Hyanwu's face remained expressionless, but everyone in the room could feel the temperature drop. Anything else? Yes, sir. The Council believes all humans are dead. They've classified our entire species as extinct. This gives us a significant advantage in terms of surprise. Gu-Won paused, but there's more. My agents have discovered something important about Council military doctrine. The display shifted to show battle formations and tactical analyses. The Council species fight according to ancient codes of honor. They avoid civilian casualties, they warn enemies before attacking, and they accept surrenders. Their entire military philosophy is based on civilized warfare. And they have no experience fighting an enemy that doesn't follow those rules. No experience with total war, psychological warfare, or enemies who fight to completely destroy, rather than just defeat. Commander Minho leaned forward. You mean they don't know how to fight humans? Exactly. They expect their enemies to be reasonable, to follow rules, to show mercy. They have no defense against an enemy that wants to win at any cost. Hyanwu absorbed this information. The Council had made humanity into the perfect enemy for themselves, a species with nothing to lose, no honor codes to follow, and a human understanding of total warfare that no other species possessed. Are we ready for our first strike? He asked. So Young nodded. The stealth ships are prepared. We've identified a remote Council supply depot in the Vega system. Small garrison, minimal defenses, but strategically important for their supply lines. And it's far enough from major Council worlds that they might not immediately realize what happened. Added G-1. Hyanwu studied the tactical display. The supply depot served 12 Council worlds and contained enough military equipment to arm several fleets. But more importantly, it would be their first message to the galaxy. Commander Yoon, select your best assault teams. Captain Nam, prepare the retribution for departure. Dr. Kim, I want enhanced soldiers for this mission. He turned to G1. What kind of message should we leave? Something simple, sir. Something that will terrify them without revealing our full capabilities. Good, and so Young. Hyanwu looked at his chief engineer. I want this depot completely destroyed. No survivors, no wreckage that can be analyzed, nothing that shows how we did it. Understood, sir, but leave one thing intact. A communications array. I want to send a message to the Council. 2 weeks later, the Council received their first communication from the dead. The message was simple, delivered in perfect Galactic. Standard by Admiral Hyanwu Kim himself. This is Admiral Kim of the human fleet. You destroyed our world. You murdered our families. You called us pests and celebrated our extinction. You were wrong. We are not extinct. We are not pests. We are your reckoning. Earth remembers. And now we begin to collect the debt. The transmission ended with footage from Earth's destruction, followed by images of the Vega supply depot burning in space. The Council's first reaction was disbelief. Humans were extinct. The surveillance had confirmed it. But as reports came in from other Frontier Systems ships disappearing, supply convoys vanishing, remote stations going silent, a terrible truth began to emerge. The humans were not only alive, they were hunting. Prime Minister Thexmore called an emergency council session. How many humans could possibly have survived? He demanded. Unknown, sir, replied his military advisor. But based on the attack patterns, we estimate several 100,000 at minimum. A few 100,000 primitives should not be a threat to the Council. But even as he spoke, Thexmore knew something was wrong. The attacks were too precise, too coordinated, too sophisticated for mere survivors with stolen ships. Back in the Kepler Nebula, Admiral Hyun-Woo Kim stood before his assembled fleet commanders. 200 warships floated in perfect formation around New Sol Station, ready for the campaign that would reshape the galaxy. For 5 years we have prepared, he told them. We have learned their weaknesses, built our weapons, and hardened our hearts. Today we begin the work of justice. He looked out at the assembled officers, survivors all, each one carrying the memory of a dead world and 8 billion murdered people. They wanted to eliminate us. Instead, they created the thing they feared most, humans with nothing left to lose and the technology to make them pay. The fleet began moving toward Council space, invisible to their sensors, unstoppable in their purpose. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when humans stopped trying to be civilized. The first Council world to fall was Carousel Prime, a peaceful trading hub with 2 billion inhabitants. The attack came without warning, without demands, and without mercy. Admiral Hyun-Woo Kim watched from the bridge of the Retribution as human stealth ships materialized around the planet like ghosts made solid. The Council garrison never had time to send a distress signal. Within 4 hours, every military installation was destroyed, every orbital defense platform was burning wreckage, and every government building was rubble. But the humans did not stop there. Begin the broadcast, Hyun-Woo ordered. Every screen on Carousel Prime activated simultaneously. The planet's 2 billion citizens found themselves watching footage of Earth's death 5 years earlier. They saw continents burning, oceans boiling, cities turning to ash. They watched 8 billion humans die in a carefully planned genocide. Then Admiral Kim's face appeared on their screens. Citizens of Carousel Prime, he said in perfect galactic standard. Your government voted to support the destruction of Earth. Your representatives cheered when they heard 8 billion humans had been murdered. Your leaders called it successful pest control. The camera pulled back to show the Admiral standing in front of a tactical display showing Carousel Prime surrounded by human warships. We are the pests who survived, and we have come to collect payment for our dead. The broadcast ended with a simple message. You have 24 hours to evacuate your planet. Commander Min Ho-yoon led the ground assault teams that landed the next day. They found empty cities, abandoned spaceports, and terrified civilians fleeing in every available ship. The humans let them go. They were not interested in murdering civilians. They were interested in sending a message. The kinetic bombardment began at exactly 24 hours after the warning. Tungsten rods fell from orbit like silver rain, each one hitting with the force of a nuclear weapon. But the targets were carefully chosen: government buildings, military academies, council monuments, and the massive statues celebrating Earth's destruction that stood in the planet's capital city. When the bombardment ended, Carousel Prime was still habitable, but every symbol of council authority had been erased from its surface. Captain Woo Jin-nam supervised the final phase of the operation. Human engineering teams planted devices throughout the planet's communication networks. From now on, Carousel Prime would broadcast the story of Earth's destruction to every ship that passed through the system. Ghost Fleet to all vessels, Hyun-Woo transmitted as the human ships prepared to depart. Carousel Prime is now a memorial to the 8 billion humans murdered by Council decree. Learn from it. Then the human fleet vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving only burning orbital facilities and a planet that would never forget what it had witnessed. News of Carousel Prime's fall sent shockwaves through Council space. At first, most governments refused to believe the reports. Humans were extinct. The surveillance data proved it. But as similar attacks occurred across the frontier, denial became impossible. The pattern was always the same. Human ships would appear without warning, destroy all military targets, broadcast Earth's destruction to the population, give civilians time to evacuate, then systematically eliminate every symbol of Council authority before disappearing again. Intelligence. Officer Ji-won Choi had spent years studying Council psychology, and her understanding proved devastatingly effective. Each attack was designed not just to destroy military targets, but to create maximum psychological impact. The Council species think in terms of honor and civilization, she explained to Admiral Kim during a briefing aboard New Seoul Station. When they fight wars, they try to minimize suffering and preserve infrastructure. They expect their enemies to do the same. She activated a holographic display showing Council communication intercepts. Our attacks violate every rule of civilized warfare they understand. We give no quarter, accept no surrender, and show no mercy to military targets. But we also let civilians escape, which confuses them even more. They don't understand our strategy, added Dr. Yoonji Kim. We're not trying to conquer territory or capture resources. We're trying to destroy their belief in their own superiority. The psychological warfare was working better than anyone had expected. Council worlds began demanding protection from their government. Trade routes shifted to avoid systems where humans might attack. Military recruitment dropped as soldiers realized that fighting humans meant facing an enemy that didn't follow any rules they understood. But the most effective weapon in the human arsenal was their own story. Captain Soo-Jin Lee commanded the Psychological Warfare Division, and her teams had perfected the art of turning Council propaganda against itself. Every human attack began with broadcasts showing Earth's destruction, followed by recordings of Council leaders celebrating the genocide. Let them hear their own words, Soo-Jin explained to her teams. Let them see what they cheered for 5 years ago. Make them understand that we are not invaders or conquerors, we are consequences. The broadcasts always ended the same way, with Admiral Kim's voice promising that this was only the beginning. Prime Minister Thexmore finally acknowledged the human threat during an emergency. Council session on Valthra Prime, the once confident leader now looked tired and worried as he addressed the assembled representatives. The terrorist attacks on our frontier worlds must be stopped, he declared. These surviving primitives are using guerrilla tactics that violate every principle of civilized warfare. How many ships do they have? Asked the representative from Carousel Prime, whose government was now operating from a refugee fleet. Intelligence estimates between 200 and 300 vessels, replied the military advisor. But they're using technology we don't understand. They appear without warning, strike with overwhelming force, then vanish before our reinforcements arrive. What kind of technology? Stealth systems that our sensors cannot detect, adaptive armor that improves during combat, kinetic weapons that can crack planetary crusts. And most disturbing of all, they seem to know our fleet movements before we make them. That last part was thanks to Ji-won Choi's spy network. Enhanced humans had infiltrated dozens of council worlds, some of them rising to positions of significant authority. The council's open, trusting society made them vulnerable to infiltration by humans who had learned to think like aliens. What do they want? Asked another representative. Thexmore activated a recording of the human admiral's latest broadcast. Kim's face appeared on the chamber's main screen, as calm and cold as winter death. Citizens of the Galactic Council, the recording began. For 5 years, you have celebrated the murder of 8 billion humans. You built monuments to your successful genocide. You held parades to commemorate our extinction. You were wrong. The image shifted to show the human fleet, hundreds of warships arranged in perfect formation around New Seoul Station. We are not Extinct, we are not defeated. We are the debt collectors for a crime beyond forgiveness. Every council world that participated in Earth's destruction will be held accountable. Every leader who voted for genocide will face justice. Every monument to our supposed extinction will be torn down. Kim's face returned to the screen. We offer no terms. We accept no surrender. We will show you exactly the same mercy you showed our children. The recording ended with footage of Earth burning, followed by images of Carousel Prime's government district in ruins. The council chamber fell silent. Finally, one representative asked the question they were all thinking: how do we stop them? We can't, Dexmore admitted, not with conventional tactics. They're not fighting a war of conquest. They're conducting a campaign of vengeance, and they have nothing left to lose. But even as the council leadership struggled to understand the human threat, worse news was arriving from the frontier. The humans were no longer attacking alone on 17 different worlds. Species that had been oppressed or enslaved by the council were rising in rebellion. Human weapons and human advisors supported these uprisings, turning local conflicts into systematic challenges to council authority. The humans had learned something the council never expected. There were many species in the galaxy who had their own reasons to hate the council's version of civilization. Admiral Kim stood on the observation deck of New Sol Station, watching his fleet prepare for the next phase of operations. 300 human warships now patrolled the nebula, supported by dozens of allied vessels crewed by former council slaves. Commander So Young Park joined him at the window. Sir, the Earthbreaker-class dreadnoughts are ready for deployment. Each one can crack a planet's crust with a single bombardment. Good. How many do we have operational? 12, sir. We've named them after Earth's major cities: New York, Tokyo, London, Mumbai, Lagos, Sao Paulo, Cairo, Sydney, Moscow, Mexico City, Istanbul, and Seoul. Henwu nodded. Each ship represented not just enormous firepower, but the memory of millions of dead humans. And our alliance? Growing every day. The Zephyrian rebels have taken 3 systems. The Korthic freedom fighters have liberated their homeworld. And the hegemony resistance is requesting human support for their uprising. Give them whatever they need. Weapons, advisors, training. But make sure they understand. This is not about creating a new empire. This is about justice. The intercom crackled with an urgent. The coalition of the damned had grown beyond anything Admiral Hyun-woo Kim had dared to imagine. What began as 500,000 human refugees had become a military alliance spanning dozens of star systems and including millions of beings who shared one common trait. They all had reasons to hate the Galactic Council. Admiral Insu Beek stood on the bridge of the Zephyrian flagship Liberation, watching the largest fleet assembly in galactic history. Around the hidden base at New Sol Station, over 3,000 warships hung in perfect formation. Human vessels formed the core, but they were supported by ships from 17 different species that had joined the human cause. Status report. Admiral Kim requested as he entered the command center. All allied fleets are in position, Insu replied. The former council prisoner had spent 10 years in labor camps before the human uprising freed his people. Now he commanded the largest non-human force in the coalition. The Zephyrians have brought 400 ships. The Korthic rebels have 200, and the hegemony resistance has contributed 300 vessels. And morale? High, sir. Every species here has their own reasons for wanting the council. Destroyed? The humans gave them hope, but they're fighting for their own freedom. Chief Diplomat Kyung Hee-oh stepped forward with the latest intelligence reports. Her job was coordinating between species that had never worked together before, each with their own languages, customs, and military traditions. Sir, our spy networks report that the Council is finally taking us seriously. Prime Minister Dexmore has declared a state of galactic emergency. She activated a holographic display showing Council fleet movements. They're mobilizing everything. 10,000 ships from across Council space, all converging on the Kepler Nebula. They plan to crush U.S. with overwhelming force. Strategic Commander Dong Hyun Shin studied the tactical display with satisfaction. He had spent 2 years planning for this exact scenario. Sir, they're making the same mistake we hoped they would. They're thinking like the Council. Explain. They see us as rebels hiding in a remote system. Their strategy is to bring massive force to bear on our position and crush us in a single decisive battle. It's exactly how the Council has always dealt with threats. Overwhelming military superiority applied to a fixed target. Admiral Kim nodded. But we're not a fixed target. Exactly. The Coalition isn't defending territory. We're not trying to hold the Kepler Nebula. We're using it as bait. The plan was audacious in its simplicity. The Council fleet would arrive expecting to find desperate refugees hiding among asteroids. Instead, they would face the largest ambush in military history. Engineer So Young Park had spent months preparing the battlefield. The entire nebula was now a weapon system designed to channel the Council fleet into carefully prepared killing zones. Asteroid mines, gravity wells, sensor jamming fields, and hidden weapon platforms turned the nebula into a maze where Council numbers would become a disadvantage. The Council fights in neat formations with clear command structures, So Young explained to the assembled commanders. Their ships are designed to work together in open space battles, but the nebula will break up their formations and force them to fight in small groups. And that's where we have the advantage, added Captain Woojin Nam from the Retribution. Human ships were designed for independent operation. Our crews are trained to fight without constant communication with Fleet Command. We excel at small unit tactics. The Psychological Warfare Division had also been busy. Captain Sujin Lee's teams had prepared the ultimate propaganda weapon, a complete record of every Council war crime committed against member species over the past century. When the battle begins, we'll broadcast everything, Sujin explained. Every slave labor camp, every forced relocation, every cultural genocide. Let the Council fleet hear the voices of their victims before they die. Admiral Kim reviewed the final preparations with grim satisfaction. 5 years of planning had led to this moment. The Council was bringing their entire military might to crush what they thought was a handful of human survivors. They had no idea they were walking into a trap designed by species who understood warfare in ways the Council had forgotten. Sir, Jowon Choi's voice crackled over the communication system from her position deep in Council space. The Council fleet has begun its final approach. Admiral Velkesh is commanding from the dreadnought Eternal Glory. He's bringing the entire 1st, 3rd, and 5th battle groups. How long until they reach the outer perimeter? 6 hours, sir. Admiral Kim activated the fleet-wide communication system. His voice would now reach every ship in the Coalition of the Damned, every human survivor, and every alien who had joined their cause. Warriors of the Coalition, he began. In 6 hours, the Galactic Council will arrive with 10,000 ships. They come to finish what they started 5 years ago. They want to eliminate the last trace of human resistance and crush the rebellion they helped create. He paused, looking out at the massive fleet assembled around him. Human dreadnoughts named for dead Earth cities. Zephyrian cruisers crewed by former slaves. Korthik fighters piloted by species the Council had tried to exterminate. Hegemony vessels commanded by rebels who had watched their homeworlds burn. They expect to find frightened refugees hiding among rocks. They will find the galaxy's reckoning. Instead, today we show them the price of genocide. Today we teach them that some debts can only be paid in blood. The fleet began moving into position. Unlike Council formations that relied on massive ships arranged in orderly lines, the Coalition used swarm tactics. Small groups of ships scattered throughout the nebula, each one positioned to strike and fade before the enemy could respond. The first contact came exactly when projected. Council scouts entered the outer edge of the nebula and immediately triggered the prepared sensor networks. Admiral Kim watched their positions appear on the tactical display as red dots moving slowly through the maze of asteroids. They're proceeding cautiously, reported Dong Hyen. Standard Council doctrine: scouts first, then screening forces, then the main battle line. Good, let them follow their training right into our trap. The Council advance guard consisted of 300 ships arranged in a perfect V formation. They moved through the nebula like they were parading in open space, maintaining precise distances and constant communication with their command ship. Captain Chang Min Kang commanded the stealth destroyer Silent Fury, positioned along the Council fleet's projected path. His ship was invisible to their sensors, a ghost waiting in the dark between asteroids. All stealth units, this is Admiral Kim, begin Operation Reckoning. Show them how humans learn to fight. The ambush began with surgical precision. Silent Fury materialized directly behind the Council formation and launched a spread of kinetic torpedoes at point-blank range. The lead Council cruiser exploded in a ball of superheated metal before its crew even knew they were under attack. Across the nebula, 30 more stealth ships revealed themselves simultaneously. The Council advance guard found itself surrounded by enemies that had appeared from nowhere, firing weapons they had never encountered, using tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare. Second wave advance, Admiral Kim ordered. The Zephyrian fighters swept in like a swarm of angry insects. Their ships were smaller than Council vessels, but infinitely more maneuverable in the asteroid field. They darted between the rocks, fired their weapons, and vanished again before the Council could target them. Third wave, advance. The Korthuk heavy cruisers emerged from concealment among the largest asteroids. Their ships were crewed by Council standards, but they mounted weapons designed for one purpose: cracking heavy armor at close range. Massive plasma cannons reached out across the void to gut Council dreadnoughts from the inside. Admiral Velkesh, commanding the Council fleet from the Eternal Glory, watched his advance guard being systematically destroyed and felt a chill of genuine fear. This wasn't the desperate last stand of human refugees. This was a carefully planned military operation conducted by an enemy that understood modern warfare better than the Council did. All ships, emergency scatter formation, he ordered. We're facing a coordinated ambush, but it was too late. The Council fleet was already deep in the nebula, stretched out in a long column that made mutual support impossible. Asteroid fields blocked their sensors and communications. Gravity wells generated by hidden human devices disrupted their navigation systems. Sir, his tactical officer reported with growing panic, we're reading massive energy signatures throughout the nebula. There are hundreds of enemy ships out there, maybe thousands. Impossible. Intelligence said the humans had at most 300 vessels. Sir, these aren't all human ships. I'm detecting Zephyrian, Korthuk, and hegemony signatures. The rebels have formed some kind of alliance. Admiral Velkesh realized with growing horror that the Council had walked into a trap prepared by every species they had oppressed over the past century. This wasn't just a human rebellion, this was the galaxy's revenge. Send a message to Velthera Prime, he ordered. Tell them we need immediate reinforcements. We're not facing a few human survivors. We're facing a coalition. But even as he spoke, Admiral Kim was preparing the next phase of the operation. The main Council battle groups were now entering the heart of the nebula. The Council fleet died screaming. Admiral Haiyan Wu. Kim watched from the bridge of the Retribution as 10,000 Council ships were systematically destroyed in the depths of the Kepler Nebula. The trap had worked perfectly. What the Council thought would be a simple extermination mission had become the largest military disaster in galactic history. Sir, Admiral Velkesh is requesting communication, reported Communications Officer Hai Young. He wants to discuss surrender terms. Put him through. The main screen flickered to life. Showing the bridge of the Council flagship Eternal Glory, Admiral Velkesh looked desperate, his blue skin pale with fear and his black eyes wide with shock. Behind him, damage control teams worked frantically to repair systems as his ship shuddered under continued bombardment. Admiral Kim, Velkesh began, his voice shaking. I propose an immediate ceasefire. We can discuss terms for ... No. Kim's voice was as cold as deep space. You came here to finish exterminating humanity. There will be no ceasefire. There will be no terms. There will be no survivors. But the rules of civilized warfare You gave up the right to invoke those rules when you murdered 8 billion civilians on Earth. Kim leaned forward, his face filled with terrible purpose. You showed our children no mercy. You showed our elders no mercy. You showed our world no mercy. Why should we show you any? The transmission ended. Around the eternal glory, human stealth ships materialized like death itself. Their weapons already charging for the final strike, Captain Wu Jin Nam commanded the assault on the Council flagship. His ship, the Retribution, had been built for this moment, the final destruction of the fleet that had murdered Earth. As kinetic torpedoes tore through the eternal glory's hull, he thought of his wife and daughter who had died in Seoul 5 years ago. Target their command center, he ordered. Make sure Velkesh sees it coming. The Council Admiral died watching Earth's children take their revenge. With the destruction of the Council's main fleet, the path to Velthor Prime lay open, but Admiral Kim had learned patience over 5 years of careful planning. The Coalition would not simply charge toward the Council homeworld. They would make the journey a lesson in terror. Begin Phase 2, Kim ordered as the last Council ships burned in the nebula. I want every Council world to know what's coming. The psychological warfare campaign that followed would be remembered as the most effective terror operation in galactic history. Captain Sujin Lee's teams had spent months preparing broadcasts that would break the Council's will to resist. Every surviving communication satellite, every emergency beacon, every distress call from the destroyed fleet carried the same message. Footage of Earth's destruction, followed by images of the Coalition fleet. The galaxy watched as 3,000 warships emerged from the Kepler Nebula like an unstoppable tide of vengeance. Citizens of the Galactic Council, Admiral Kim's voice echoed across hundreds of star systems. Your leaders told you that humanity was extinct. They celebrated our genocide. They built monuments to our murder. They were wrong. The broadcasts showed the Council fleet's destruction in horrifying detail. Ships breaking apart under kinetic bombardment. Crews dying as their vessels were systematically torn apart. Admiral Velkesh's final moments as the eternal glory exploded around him. This is the fate of those who choose genocide, Kim continued. Your fleet came to finish what you started. Instead, they learned what happens when humans stop being civilized. But the humans did not simply broadcast threats. They also revealed the truth. Intelligence Officer G1 Choi had spent years collecting evidence of Council crimes against member species. Now that evidence flooded the galactic communication networks, video records of slave labor camps, audio recordings of Council leaders discussing the final solution to various species problems, documents detailing cultural genocide programs that had eliminated dozens of civilizations. For centuries, you have called yourselves civilized while committing atrocities, Kim's broadcast continued. You have enslaved species, destroyed cultures, and eliminated entire civilizations. You called it progress. We call it what it is: evil. The psychological impact was devastating. Council worlds began demanding explanations from their governments. Military units refused orders to deploy against the Coalition. 3 entire star systems declared neutrality and opened their borders to Coalition ships. Most importantly, more oppressed species joined the human cause. The Vrathari, whose homeworld had been strip-mined by Council corporations, contributed 200 ships. The Kelani, whose children had been taken for educational programs that erased their culture, provided 300 vessels. The Thomases, who had been forced to rebuild their society according to Council specifications, offered 500 warships. Admiral Insubik now commanded a fleet of 8,000 ships representing 37 different species. The Coalition of the Damned had become the largest military force in galactic history, united by shared hatred of Council oppression. Sir, reported Strategic Commander Dong Hyen Shin, we're receiving surrender offers from 17 Council worlds. They want to negotiate separate peace agreements. Denied, Admiral Kim replied without hesitation. No separate peace, no negotiations. The Council dies as an institution, or the war continues until every Council world burns. The message was clear. This was not a war of conquest, but a war of justice. The Coalition would accept nothing less than the complete dismantling of the system that had enabled genocide and oppression across the galaxy. Prime Minister Thexmore, isolated on Velthora Prime with the remnants of his government, made one final attempt to avoid the coming reckoning. He broadcast a galaxy-wide message offering reparations, territorial concessions, and even his own resignation. Admiral Kim's response was broadcast from the Bridge of New Sol, the massive dreadnought that had replaced the space station as humanity's mobile capital. Prime Minister Thexmore, you offer compensation for genocide. You offer territory for mass murder. You offer your resignation for the deaths of 8 billion humans. Kim's face filled screens across the galaxy, and his eyes held the cold fire of absolute judgment. Your offers are rejected. There's only one acceptable outcome to this war: the complete and unconditional surrender of the Galactic Council, the dissolution of your government, the trial of every leader who participated in Earth's destruction, and the establishment of a new galactic order that will ensure genocide never happens again. You have 72 hours to surrender unconditionally. After that, the Coalition fleet will arrive at Velthora Prime, and we will take what justice demands. The 72 hours passed without a response. The siege of Velthora Prime began with the arrival of the largest military fleet in galactic history. 8,000 Coalition ships materialized in the system simultaneously, their combined mass causing gravitational disturbances that triggered planet-wide earthquakes. Admiral Kim stood on the observation deck of New Sol, watching the Council homeworld through reinforced transparosteel. The planet below was beautiful: blue oceans, green continents, gleaming cities that housed the center of galactic civilization. Soon, it would all be under human control. Sir, reported Captain Woojin Nam, planetary defenses are attempting to establish a communication link. Put them through. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Defense Minister Kralvin, Thexmore's military commander. He looked tired and defeated, a leader who knew his cause was hopeless. Admiral Kim, I am authorized to negotiate the surrender of Velthora Prime. There are no negotiations. Only unconditional surrender? We do terms? Good. You have 12 hours to transmit the complete surrender of the Galactic Council. All military forces will stand down. All government officials will report for processing. All records of Council activities will be transmitted to Coalition forces. And after that? Admiral Kim looked down at the planet that had ordered Earth's destruction. After that, we build something better. The surrender ceremony took place in the Grand Assembly Chamber where the Council had voted to destroy Earth 5 years earlier. Admiral Kim walked through the same halls where alien leaders had celebrated human genocide, his boots echoing on marble floors that would soon serve a very different purpose. Prime Minister Thexmore waited in the chamber, surrounded by the remnants of his government. He looked older, broken by the weight of his civilization's collapse. Admiral Kim, he said as the human leader approached, I want you to know that not all of us supported the decision to destroy Earth, but none of you stopped it, Kim replied, and all of you celebrated afterward. The surrender document was simple: the complete dissolution of the Galactic Council and the transfer of all authority to the Coalition of the Damned. With the stroke of a pen, 5,000 years of Council rule ended forever. What happens now? Thexmore asked. Admiral Kim looked around the chamber where his species had been condemned to extinction. Now we build a galaxy where genocide is impossible, where no species can be destroyed because others find them inconvenient, where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them, and the Council species will be judged according to their actions. Those who participated in genocide will face justice. Those who were merely complicit will have the chance to earn redemption, and those who actively resisted will be W. Emperor Hien-Woo Kim stood in the ruins of the Council chamber, watching construction crews tear down the monument that had celebrated Earth's destruction. The twisted metal sculpture, which had depicted humanity as a plague being cleansed from the galaxy, was being melted down to build something more appropriate, a memorial to the 8 billion humans who had died here. By council decree, 6 months had passed since the council's surrender, and the galaxy was still adapting to its new reality. The human empire now controlled 300 systems directly, with another 1,000 under coalition protection. But building a new order from the ashes of the old proved more complicated than winning the war had been. "Your Majesty," said Prime Administrator So-Young Park, using the title that Kim still felt uncomfortable hearing. "The daily reports are ready for your review." She handed him a datapad containing updates from across the empire. The numbers told a story of massive upheaval, refugee populations being resettled, war crimes tribunals processing thousands of cases, and reconstruction efforts on dozens of worlds that had been damaged during the liberation campaign. "How many council officials are still awaiting trial?" Kim asked. "Approximately 50,000, sir." "The tribunals are working as fast as possible, but the scope of the crimes is enormous. We've documented evidence of genocide against 47 different species over the past 2 centuries. Kim nodded grimly. The trials had been necessary, but they revealed the true extent of council atrocities. What had happened to Earth was not unique. It was simply the most recent example of a pattern that stretched back centuries. And the resistance movements? Mostly contained. There are still holdout groups on 12 worlds, but they lack popular support. Most council species seem relieved to be free of their old government. That was the most surprising development of the occupation. Rather than fighting to restore their former rulers, most council species had welcomed the change. Centuries of oppression had created deep resentment that only became visible after the council's fall. Admiral Insu Beek entered the chamber, his Zephyrian features showing the strain of managing a galaxy-wide military occupation. "Your Majesty, we've received a response from the Outer Rim territories. They're requesting admission to the coalition." "How many systems?" 237. "They want protection from the warlords who are trying to fill the power vacuum in Council." Space. The collapse of the Council had created unexpected problems. In regions far from the core worlds, local strongmen were attempting to carve out their own empires. Pirates raided undefended systems. Slave traders resumed operations that had been suppressed under Council law. Grant their request, Kim decided. But send them the standard terms: no slavery, no genocide, no oppression of minority species. And they contribute to the common defense. "Yes, sir?" Chief Justice Ji-Won Choi approached with her own report. The former intelligence officer now oversaw the legal system that was trying to establish the rule of law across hundreds of different species and legal traditions. "Your Majesty, we've completed the review of the Council archives. The evidence is overwhelming. Every senior Council official, from Prime Minister Thexmore down to local administrators, bears responsibility for systematic atrocities. Recommended sentences? For those directly involved in genocide, execution or life imprisonment. For those who enabled the system but didn't directly order murders, exile to labor colonies where they can help rebuild the worlds they destroyed." Kim considered this. The humans could have simply executed every council official as an act of vengeance. But they had chosen justice instead, even when justice was more complicated than revenge. Approved. But I want the executions to be public. Broadcast across the galaxy. Let everyone see that there are consequences for genocide. Yes, sir. The transformation of galactic civilization was proceeding faster than anyone had expected. Dr. Yoonji Kim's enhancement programs had been adapted. For other species, not to change their fundamental nature, but to help them reach their full potential. The Zephyrians became even more intuitive. The Korthik grew stronger and more resilient. The Vrathari developed enhanced mathematical abilities that revolutionized galactic engineering, but the most significant change was cultural. Captain Soo-Jin Lee, now Director of Cultural Integration, had developed programs to help different species work together without losing their unique identities. Unlike the Council's forced assimilation, the human approach celebrated diversity while establishing common principles. "Your Majesty," she reported, "the integration programs are showing remarkable success. We've established trade networks that connect previously isolated species. Scientific collaboration has increased by 300%. And most importantly, interspecies conflicts have dropped to the lowest levels in recorded history. What's the secret? Respect, sir. The Council tried to make everyone the same. We're teaching them to value their differences while working toward common goals. The economic transformation was equally dramatic. Engineer Min-ho Yoon, now Director of Industrial Development, had overseen the conversion of war industries to peaceful purposes. The massive shipyards that had built the coalition fleet were now producing exploration vessels, cargo haulers, and mobile habitats for refugee populations. We're ahead of schedule on most reconstruction projects, he reported. The worlds that were damaged during the liberation campaign are being rebuilt with improved infrastructure. Many of them are now more prosperous than they were under council rule. But the most challenging task was psychological. Billions of beings across the galaxy had grown up believing that the council's oppressive system was natural and necessary. They had been taught that some species were inherently superior to others, that genocide was sometimes justified, and that freedom was dangerous. Director Chang Min-kong led the massive education initiative designed to counter centuries of propaganda. We're not trying to indoctrinate anyone, he explained to Kim during a briefing. We're simply teaching facts, the history of council atrocities, the evidence of what really happened to Earth, and the principles of the new order. Resistance? Less than expected. Most people are hungry for the truth once they realize they've been lied to for their entire lives. The biggest challenge is helping them understand that they don't have to be ashamed of their species' past if they choose to build a better future. The new galactic constitution was taking shape under the guidance of legal scholar Kyung Hee-oh. Unlike the council's rigid hierarchy, the human system was designed to prevent any single group from dominating others. The key principle is negative rights, she explained. Rather than granting powers to governments, we're establishing limitations. No government can commit genocide, enslave populations, or suppress peaceful cultural practices. Everything else is up to local communities. And enforcement? The human fleet maintains the peace. But we've also established the Galactic Court of Justice to handle disputes between species. The goal is to resolve conflicts before they require military intervention. Emperor Kim walked through the gardens that had replaced the council's military parade grounds, thinking about the price of the justice they had achieved. The war was over, but its consequences would shape the galaxy for centuries. 50 million beings had died during the liberation campaign. Entire industries had been destroyed. Refugee populations numbered in the hundreds of millions. The economic cost of rebuilding was staggering, but the alternative had been worse. Intelligence reports from the recovered council archives revealed that Earth's destruction had been just the beginning. The council had planned to eliminate 17 more species that they considered problematic. The Korthak were scheduled for extermination because they were too aggressive. The Vrathari faced genocide because they were too independent. The hegemony worlds were marked for population reduction because they had too many people. Your Majesty, said Personal Secretary Ha Young-young, you have a call from Admiral Wu Jin-nam. He's requesting permission to begin the next phase of exploration. Kim smiled for the first time in days. Put him through. Captain Nam's face appeared on the communication screen, showing him standing on the bridge of the exploration vessel New Earth. Behind him, the stars stretched into infinity. Your Majesty, we've completed our survey of the galactic rim. There are hundreds of uninhabited systems suitable for colonization. We could accommodate all the refugee populations and still have room for natural expansion. Any signs of other sapient species? Several, sir. All of them seem to be pre-industrial civilizations. Following your orders, we've established monitoring stations but made no contact. Kim nodded. One of the new order's fundamental principles was that developing civilizations should be left alone to find their own path. No more forced uplift programs, no more cultural interference, no more imposed civilization. Continue the survey work. But remember, observe only. We've learned the price of playing God with other species' development. Understood, sir. As the communication ended, Kim reflected on humanity's transformation. 5 years ago, they had been refugees fleeing the ashes of their dead world. Now, they ruled the largest empire in galactic history, but power brought responsibility. Minister Dong Hyen Shin approached with the daily security briefing. Your Majesty, 10 years had passed since the fall of the Galactic Council, and the human empire had grown into something unprecedented in galactic history. Emperor Hyenwoo Kim stood in the memorial chamber aboard the flagship New Earth, surrounded by holographic images of the 8 billion humans who had died when their world burned. Each face was there. Each name was recorded. Each life was remembered. Your Majesty, said Fleet Admiral So Young Park, the anniversary ceremony is ready to begin. Today marked 10 years since Earth's destruction, and beings across the galaxy would pause to remember. Not just humanity's loss, but the price of allowing genocide to go unpunished. The memorial broadcasts would reach over 1,000 worlds, reminding everyone why the New Order existed. Kim activated the galaxy-wide communication system. His image would appear on screens across human space, coalition territories, and even the independent systems that had chosen to remain neutral. Citizens of the galaxy, he began, 10 years ago today, the Galactic Council decided that humanity was too dangerous to exist. They murdered 8 billion civilians in a carefully planned genocide. They celebrated our extinction. They built monuments to our destruction. The holographic display behind him showed Earth as it had been: blue oceans, green continents, gleaming cities. Then it shifted to show Earth as it died: burning continents, boiling seas, cities turning to ash. They were wrong about one thing: they did not destroy humanity. They forged us into something stronger, something more determined, and something absolutely committed to ensuring that no other species would ever face the same fate. The display changed again, showing the current state of the galaxy. Over 1,500 worlds now flew the banner of the human empire or its coalition allies. Trade routes connected previously isolated species. Scientific expeditions explored regions that had been forbidden under council rule. Today, the galaxy is a very different place. No species faces extinction for political convenience. No world is strip-mined to enrich distant bureaucrats. No children are taken from their families for educational programs designed to erase their culture. This did not happen by accident. It happened because enough beings decided that the old order was intolerable and were willing to fight to change it. Kim paused, looking directly into the camera. But our work is not finished. There are still those who dream of returning to the old ways. Still those who believe that some species are worth more than others. Still those who think that genocide can be justified if it serves their interests. To them I say this: we are watching, we are ready, and we will never allow the crimes of the past to be repeated. The ceremony continued with reports from across the empire. Each presented a picture of unprecedented prosperity and cooperation, but also of constant vigilance against the forces that had once destroyed Earth. Admiral Insubik reported on the military situation. Your Majesty, the human fleet now consists of 8,000 ships stationed across 12 sectors. We've established rapid response fleets that can reach any threatened system within 72 hours. Any current threats? 3 situations require attention. The hegemony remnant is attempting to rebuild their slave-trading networks in the Outer Rim. The Velthory Restoration movement is gathering support on 17 worlds. And we've detected concerning weapons research on Kepler. 7. Kim considered each threat. The hegemony remnant consisted of former council officials who had escaped the war crimes tribunals and were trying to rebuild their power base in lawless regions. The Velthory Restoration wanted to return Prime Minister Thexmore's species to galactic leadership. Kepler 7 was developing technology that could theoretically be used for planetary bombardment. Standard responses, he decided. Offer the hegemony remnant amnesty if they abandon slave trading and accept coalition oversight. Remind the Velthory Restoration that their leaders were executed for genocide and suggest they find a more productive use of their time, and invite the Kepler-7 researchers to join our civilian science programs before their work gets them glassed from orbit. Yes, sir. The economic reports were more encouraging. Director Min-ho Yoon had overseen the creation of a galactic economy based on cooperation rather than exploitation. Trade volume has increased by 400% since the Council's fall, he reported. Previously isolated species are now major economic partners. The Vrathari mathematical innovations have revolutionized space navigation. Korthik metallurgy has improved ship construction across the galaxy. And Zephyrian biotechnology is helping terraform dozens of new worlds. Any problems? The usual ones. Some species are trying to establish monopolies on key resources. Others are attempting to use economic pressure to influence smaller civilizations. But the Galactic Trade Commission is handling these issues within existing frameworks. The human empire had learned from the Council's mistakes. Rather than controlling the galaxy through military force alone, they had created institutions that made cooperation more profitable than conflict, Chief Justice Ji-won Choi reported on the legal system. Your Majesty, the Galactic Court of Justice has processed over 10,000 cases in the past year. 97% were resolved through mediation rather than military intervention. Most significant cases? The Thaxon-Verlani territorial dispute was settled through the establishment of joint colonies. The Kepler Mining Consortium was dissolved for violating environmental protection laws, and the Neo-Council terrorist group had its leadership captured and tried for conspiracy to commit genocide. That last case had been particularly important. The Neo-Council consisted of survivors from the old regime who wanted to restore the previous order. Their plot to release bioweapons on human colonies had been discovered by coalition intelligence and stopped before any attacks occurred. Sentences? Life imprisonment for the leaders, exile to reconstruction colonies for the followers. Their families were offered protection and relocation assistance. Kim nodded. The human justice system was harsh but not vindictive. Even the children of war criminals deserved the chance to build better lives. Director Soo-Jin Lee provided updates on cultural integration. Your Majesty, the Diversity Index shows continued improvement. We've documented over 3,000 distinct cultural practices that are now protected under imperial law. Interspecies cooperation has reached levels that were impossible under Council rule. Any cultural conflicts? Minor ones. The Telani religious ceremonies conflict with Korthak work schedules in the Vega system. The hegemony refugees are having trouble adapting to the concept of personal freedom. And some human colonies are struggling with the idea that they're no longer the galaxy's underdogs. That last point was significant. Many humans had trouble adjusting to their new role as the galaxy's dominant species. They had spent so long thinking of themselves as victims that accepting responsibility for galactic leadership was psychologically challenging. Solutions? Cultural exchange programs, educational initiatives, and patience. It takes time for entire civilizations to change their fundamental assumptions about how the galaxy works. The most impressive report came from Exploration Director Woo Jin Nam. Your Majesty, we've completed surveys of the entire galactic rim. We've identified 47 pre-industrial civilizations and established non-interference protocols for all of them. Any that might pose future threats? None with aggressive tendencies. Most are peaceful agricultural or early industrial societies. We've placed monitoring stations in each system, but we're maintaining strict quarantine protocols. Good, make. Sure, our people understand. No contact, no interference, no uplift programs. Let them develop naturally. Yes, sir. The exploration fleets had also discovered something unexpected. The galaxy was much larger than anyone had realized. Beyond the Council's former territory lay vast regions of unexplored space containing millions of potentially habitable worlds. We could accommodate 1 trillion refugees without straining our resources, Nam continued. The galaxy is large enough for everyone. That abundance was part of what made the New Order possible. Under the Council, resources had been scarce because they were hoarded by ruling elites. Under human administration, the same resources were distributed more efficiently, creating prosperity for everyone, but perhaps the most important development was generational education. Director Chang Min Kong reported on the young people who were growing up in the new galaxy. Your Majesty, we now have children from over 100 different species attending integrated schools. They're learning real history, developing critical thinking skills, and most importantly, they're becoming friends with species their parents never trusted. Any problems? The usual childhood conflicts, but nothing based on species hatred. A Korthic child and a Velthri child might fight over a toy, but they're not fighting because of ancient prejudices. Kim smiled. That might be the most important victory of all. The children growing up in the human empire would never experience the species-based hatred that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. Personal Secretary Hai Young approached with a message that made Kim's smile fade. Your Majesty, we've received a communication from the Andromeda observation post. They're detecting massive energy signatures from extragalactic space. Details? Unknown, sir. The signals are unlike anything in our databases. 25 years after Earth's destruction, Emperor Hyenwoo Kim stood in the command center of the massive space station that served as humanity's new capital. New Terra was not built around a single world, but existed as a mobile fortress that could travel anywhere in the galaxy where humanity's protection was needed. The years had aged him, but his eyes still held the same cold fire that had driven humanity's rise from refugees to galactic emperors. Gray streaked his hair and lines marked his face, but his voice remained strong as he addressed the crisis that threatened everything they had built. Report, he commanded. Admiral So Young Park, now bearing the scars of countless battles, stepped forward with data that chilled everyone in the room. Your Majesty, the Andromeda signals have been decoded. We're facing an invasion force from another galaxy. The holographic display showed the terrifying truth. Thousands of massive ships were crossing the void between galaxies, heading directly for the Milky Way. Each vessel was larger than anything humanity had ever built, armed with weapons that could crack moons and protected by shields that seemed impenetrable. How long until they arrive? Kim asked. 18 months, sir. Maybe less if they have faster engines than our projections suggest. Fleet Admiral Insu Beek, whose Zephyrian features now showed the weight of commanding the largest military force in galactic history, provided the military assessment. Your Majesty, our preliminary analysis is disturbing. These ships use technology we don't understand. Their energy signatures suggest weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. Numbers? Conservative estimate, 50,000 warships, each one equivalent to our largest dreadnoughts. They're accompanied by what appear to be colony ships and industrial vessels. This isn't a raid or an exploration mission. This is a full-scale conquest fleet. Emperor Kim absorbed this information with the same calm that had carried him through Earth's destruction and the Council War, but inside, he felt the familiar weight of responsibility for every life in the galaxy. Any attempt at communication? Intelligence. Director Ji-Won Choi, her hair now white but her mind still sharp, shook her head. None, sir. They've ignored every message we've sent. The only response has been continued acceleration toward our galaxy. Analysis of their technology? Chief Scientist Min Ho-yoon stepped forward with reports that represented decades of study. Your Majesty, we've analyzed the energy patterns. From their ships? The technology appears to be based on principles we're only beginning to understand. They're using some form of quantum manipulation that makes our best weapons look primitive. Are we outclassed? Technologically, yes, but we have advantages they might not expect. Explain. These ships are built for fighting civilizations similar to the old Galactic Council. Large, organized fleets engaging in traditional battles with predictable tactics. They're not designed to fight an enemy that uses asymmetric warfare, psychological operations, and total war doctrine. Emperor Kim nodded. Humanity had never fought fair, and they wouldn't start now. What do we know about who's commanding them? Cultural? Analyst Changmin Kong provided what little intelligence they had gathered. Your Majesty, we've managed to intercept some of their internal communications. The invasion force appears to be led by an entity called the Hegemony of Eternal Order. They believe that chaos exists in our galaxy and must be eliminated. Chaos, freedom, sir. Individual choice, cultural diversity, the right of species to determine their own futures. Everything we've built over the past 25 years represents chaos to them, so they're coming to impose order. Yes, sir. Their communications suggest they plan to eliminate all chaotic elements and rebuild our galaxy according to their principles of eternal stability. Emperor Kim looked around the command center at the faces of beings who had spent their lives building a galaxy where genocide was impossible. Now they faced an enemy that wanted to commit genocide on a galactic scale. Recommendations? Defense Minister Dong Hyen-shin stepped forward with a plan that reflected everything humanity had learned about warfare. Your Majesty, we can't meet them in conventional battle, but we can make conquest so expensive that they'll reconsider their strategy. Details? Full mobilization of all Imperial and Coalition forces. Evacuation of core worlds to hidden bases in the Outer Rim. Conversion of civilian infrastructure to military production. And most importantly, recruitment of every species in the galaxy for total war. That includes former Council species? Yes, sir. We'll offer amnesty to any being willing to fight against the invasion. This isn't about old grudges anymore. This is about survival. Cultural Integration Director Soo-Jin Lee added her perspective. Your Majesty, we have something the hegemony doesn't expect, unity born from diversity. Our alliance includes over 300 different species, each contributing unique capabilities. The hegemony appears to be a single monolithic culture. Advantage, adaptability, sir. When one approach fails, we have hundreds of alternatives. They're likely rigid in their thinking, which makes them predictable. Emperor Kim made his decision with the same determination that had driven humanity's rise from the ashes of Earth. Begin immediate mobilization. I want every shipyard in the galaxy converted to military production. Recall all exploration fleets and deep space missions. And send envoys to every independent system in the galaxy. Your Majesty? Asked Admiral Park. If the hegemony wants to eliminate chaos, they'll have to eliminate all of us. Every human, every Zephyrion, every Korthek, every species that believes in freedom. We're going to make that as difficult as possible. The mobilization that followed was unprecedented in galactic history. Within weeks, every world under Imperial or Coalition control had converted to a war economy. Civilian ships were armed and converted to military use. Industrial facilities began producing weapons, armor, and spacecraft around the clock, but the most impressive change was psychological species that had fought each other for centuries united against the common threat. Former Council worlds volunteered to host refugee populations from the core systems. Independent civilizations that had resisted Imperial expansion now requested immediate admission to the Coalition. Emperor Kim addressed the galaxy from New Terra as it traveled between systems, coordinating the massive defensive preparations. Citizens of the Milky Way, he began, 25 years ago, a corrupt government tried to impose their version of order by committing genocide against humanity. Today, invaders from another galaxy threaten to impose their version of order by committing genocide against all of us. The display behind him showed the approaching hegemony fleet, still months away but growing larger in the long-range sensors. They call us chaotic because we allow different species to live according to their own values. They call us dangerous because we refuse to submit to their definition of order. They call us primitive because we fight for freedom instead of accepting slavery. They are correct on all counts. The camera focused on Kim's face, showing the same cold determination that had carried humanity through its darkest hour. We are chaotic, we are dangerous, we are primitive, and we are going to teach them why those are not weaknesses. The hegemony expects to find a galaxy of scattered civilizations that will submit rather than fight. They will find something very different. A galaxy that learned 25 years ago that some things are worth dying for. Freedom is worth dying for. Diversity is worth dying for. The right to exist without permission is worth dying for. And if dying for those principles is what's required, then we will show the universe how beings die when they have something worth dying for. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Volunteer fleets arrived from across the galaxy. Species that had never cooperated began sharing technology and resources. Ancient enemies put aside their differences to face the common threat. Admiral Wu Jin Nam, now commanding the largest fleet in galactic history, reported numbers that staggered even Emperor Kim. Your Majesty, we have assembled over 100,000 ships representing 400 different species. The shipyards are producing new vessels faster than we can crew them. Quality? Mixed, sir. Many are converted civilian ships with limited combat capability. But quantity has its own quality, and we have quantity in enormous amounts. Strategic Planning Director Hai Young presented the defensive plan that would determine the galaxy's fate. Your Majesty, we've identified 17 strategic choke points where we can force the hegemony fleet to fight on our terms. Each position is prepared for asymmetric warfare, asteroid mines, gravity weapons, and swarm attacks that will bleed them before they reach the core systems. Estimated casualties? 70% of our fleet minimum. But if we can destroy or disable even 20% of their forces, the survivors might reconsider their invasion. Emperor Kim studied the tactical projections with the same calm analysis he had used to plan humanity's revenge against the Council. The numbers were brutal, but they represented the only path to survival. Approved. Begin deployment immediately. As the galaxy prepared for the largest war in its history, Emperor Kim stood once again in the memorial chamber dedicated to Earth's dead. The 8 billion faces looked down at him, silent witnesses to humanity's final test. We kept our promise, he told them. We built a galaxy where